Hi, Lisa Schermerhorn with Lisa's Mindset podcast, and I'm very excited to introduce you to my friend Judith Manriquez. She did a human design session with me and really talks about using out-of-the-box tools to enhance your business and your marketing. So I really look forward to you watching my interview with her. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe and share. And if you have any questions or are looking to do some coaching with me or have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you. Hi, Lisa Schermerhorn here, and welcome to my podcast, Lisa's Mindset, where we delve into belief system and mindsets of people who have overcome adversity, done a lot of things in their lives to basically overcome their challenges, and then they're helping other people. And I have the privilege and the honor of meeting Judith Manriquez through a mutual friend. Was it Kelly Hunter, correct?
It
Who's
was
an
Kelly,
amazing
yes.
astrologer. And so we're going to go a little metaphysical here. So for those of you who are interested in going that out, because that's right up my alley, Judith is the owner and founder of Inspired in Expansion LLC, and she is a spiritual business mentor and visionary intuitive to intuitive women leaders, which was something that I was excited to learn about. And we actually did a little bit of a trade where I did her why and she did my human design. And human design is so fascinating because it has this whole complex incorporating some of your, I guess, astrology, your astrological
Hmm.
information, and then it spits out like this is who you are. And so I want Judith to really go into the human design, and first of all, what is your journey and how did you get to this place that you're in now, working with intuitive women?
Well, thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here. I really enjoy it. How did I get here? Do any of us ever have a straight path? Like it's never been straight path to this, right? We go through many different journeys. I have been through every traditional corporate type mainstream job. So I've done worked in nonprofits and state agencies and thought for a while I wanted to be a city manager. Ended up starting my own marketing web development business right at the .com time, along with some partners, and applied a lot of my public affairs background, which is my official formal schooling was in public affairs, and grew that business. And then realized the world was changing and I could feel it in myself. And I moved into still doing a little bit of business, but began to be drawn into working with a completely different kind of person in the world, which was the highly sensitive and highly intuitive woman. So I focused on women, but I work with all kinds of intuitives and highly sensitive people.
So what brought you to work with intuitives and highly sensitive people? What makes them appealing as opposed to someone who isn't? I'm just curious, is it what was it that piqued your interest in that area?
Well, what's really fascinating to me is business. Like I love working in businesses. I, for some reason, have a really easy grasp on all the different components of how to make a business work in alignment with a person so that it works for the person. And what I started to realize for myself is that I couldn't continue to follow the traditional marketing and traditional business practices. They didn't feel good and they weren't working for me. So we've heard this a lot in the business world, like sales tactics or smarmy or bro marketing or whatever you want to call it, but it just didn't fit. And then I've been drawn to, and for some reason have a lot of friends who are highly intuitive, and they had this larger problem of not wanting to do business because they didn't like it. And so these two things came together, and I naturally attract people who don't want to create businesses or work in traditional businesses. How do you then thrive and succeed in non-traditional or unconventional ways? And that's kind of just where I got drawn to one, because it's interesting to me, but two, it just is a very clear need. It's not just applicable to intuitives, this applies to everyone. And especially now in the workforce, with so many people wanting to not be a part of what has been the norm, then what is the alternative? That's what I've been working with for the past, gosh, almost 20 years.
You're right, because, and even in my case, as someone who's unconventional, and it's very hard to describe who you are, what you do, and how you serve when you're not the norm. Because it's important to be able to explain to people what you do without scaring them away. And I have to say, what I've seen over the past 20 years, especially, is that more and more people are open to this, where this was kind of something that was kind of kept in the closet for a long time. And I was one of them, and so people are much more open, especially these younger generations. So, explain for people who don't necessarily understand, what is an intuitive or sensitive? What does that look like for someone who's doing this kind of work? How do they think differently? What is it that's different about them that really entices you?
Wow. So intuitives to me are people who are sensitive and listen to the sensitivity that isn't related to the physical senses. So a lot of us have gut knowings, or some of us will say, well, I just really can't work there because it doesn't feel right. But, without actually having to get into explaining why, if they don't deconstruct that. And then we have all the way to the other end of the spectrum, people who know they're psychic, who can either hear or see and actively work with that. So we have a wide range. And I happen to believe that everyone is intuitive. And when you take a moment to ask them the question, how do you know what you know when you're not actually thinking the answer? And almost everyone will tell you something along the lines of, well, I just can sense it, or I feel it. Or sometimes I met somebody who said she could taste colors, taste it in her mouth. Yeah. So, and she's very conventional corporate too. So it's just very interesting. So for me, that's the intuitive path, right? All of these people who have sensitivities, when you don't have a feeling, so when your senses feel uncomfortable, or if it's grating, or just feels wrong, you don't want to be there, just like you don't want to be in a room that's too loud. So then for me, it's always been, how do we get to that part? And then your second part of the question was intuitives, and then what was the follow-on to that? Who are intuitives, and then where are we going with it?
Well, you know what?
Why them?
Yeah, well, you know what it is for me, is that you're right. Everyone has abilities, and it's whether or not they've tuned into them. And you use the word feelings. And I think that's a huge piece, because there are people who I remember being in school and the teacher would say, tell me what you know, not what you feel. And the thing is that we've been taught to kind of cut ourselves off from our intuition. There's the psychic intuition, but there's the gut intuition too. And there's also the heartfelt beliefs. Oh, I've got my heart running around, but for my heart. But it's about really tapping into the feelings, and how often do we override that because we want to either fit in, or we want to be, we have to be in this corporate structure that doesn't allow for that.
It is about feelings. And then I think so much about our feelings are a response to our nervous system. And I think when we think about intuitives, and it's the soft word for psychics, right? When we think about people like that, they are just highly receptive to the sensations they receive. And sometimes those are feelings, sometimes those are sensations, sometimes they're perceptions, sometimes it can even feel like a thought, right? So it's allowing for something that isn't an actual thought to be something that guides you. And I think it's not normally acceptable in business, although I think, there's so much science that supports this now. With the book Tipping Point, there was a lot to be said for the intuitive wisdom we have over time, like trusting that. So it's a very mainstream concept of okay, intuition, and it's becoming more popular to say. All of the work of heart math, so there's a science to emotions that we've never really given credence to, but it's a very overriding wisdom. the wisdom of sort of the nerve centers in our heart and in our gut, that they do emit more energy than our thought processes do when we think. A lot of the work that's been done in quantum physics is also comes right back to this. So it's lovely to see the way that science is validating what used to be, woo woo or hysterical or taboo, metaphysical nonsense, which it isn't. We've got so much validation for who we are now. It makes it a little bit easier to come out from hiding in
No,
conventional places.
absolutely. And people are searching for that kind of help.
Absolutely.
So what was your journey to get you to this place from the standpoint? So you went through this whole corporate life. What was it in your life? Was there a particular thing that happened to you that was just like, I'm done and I need to be true to myself? Like, obviously you've been you all along. So what gave you the courage to kind of come out in this way of just kind of being a little edgy and a little different?
It's not, I don't usually see the world of my life through crises, although I've had extremely large challenges across it. It was more a matter of a convergence of things. I had been running a business, a marketing business. 2008 hit and the economy imploded. 2008 hit and I had my gift third child on top of the other two that I had. So the business was challenged. I was challenged. Like I had broken my ankle. There was just like all of these things converged. And I had already for a few years been saying, marketing isn't enough for me. It's not challenging enough. It's not feeding me enough. And I didn't know what I wanted to go to. And it's not like you can aspire. Okay, so this was 2008. At that time, you couldn't aspire to be like, well, I want to be a professional intuitive, or I want to work in corporate and help with the highly sensitive people. I mean, we still don't even have that. But you didn't openly go out in the world and say, I can kind of tell what's holding you back in your business and how to line things up in ways that are not just about your business. We didn't have language. Right. And so for me, it was a journey of finding the people and making it up. It was never here's the thing that took me there. I think I put all the pieces together. Sometimes we have enough patterns in our life to where we see that's the direction. I started to collect up clients who wanted to work with me, who were psychic, who were connected in really beautiful ways, who were healers. And I was like, okay, this looks like the place to land. And so I've had a focus in that area, but not to the exclusion. And what I've noticed over this whole time is that I went from almost everyone being some sort of intuitive as a profession. We'll use that broadly, energy worker, intuitive as a profession, to a mix now of women who make it their profession and women who are intuitive and have learned and worked with many of the healers and are trying to do their business in a more meaningful, like heart-centered, integrated way. So now I see a combination of that happening. So they're applying everything that they live in their life into their work and their business.
Beautiful. I was thinking about how important it is to really feel fulfilled when you can really put yourself in that. And you found human design, which has really been a huge, part of your work. And we also, you did the human design with me, which I found was fascinating. I'd love for you to talk about it. And how did it, when you found out your human design, and how did that impact your life, your business, and wanting you to desire to use that to help others?
So I was in the middle of the whole question that you asked me. It was like, where am I going with my work? Who am I, right? I was in the middle of that question and I was kept searching like we all do to try to find the path. And I kept receiving information that I really needed to focus on authority. And we know like authority seems like a really solid, like focus on your authority. Okay. And I sat down and I decided to see if Google would give me an answer. Like, well, what do we exactly mean by authority? And like, as women, or do we not express enough? And strangely enough, human design came up. And I had already been approached multiple times, 3 or 4 times, by people who knew about human design and said, oh, you might want to look into it. And I did, and I discredited it. I was like, nope, can't work with this right now. It's too complicated. Like, I'm not going to get into that. But when it came back around, and this was in 2014, I said, okay, I'll listen. And I did some preliminary research, and what human design offered was a very simple way to understand how people create and how they're made to make decisions. And when you think about it at our core, as a human, I like to think we're here to have a passion and create from that passion. Like, all of us have a desire, and we're like, oh, I want to have this happen, or I want to make this be true in my life. That's about creation. And how do we stay in alignment with universal flow so that everything is easier? Because we really don't like when things get hard and painful and unhappy and challenging and everything gets slowed down in ways. How can we do it so we can create easily? Well, we pay attention to how we're designed to make decisions and how we're designed to create in human design. And I said, okay, I understood that much. I was like, I'll practice it. I'll just give it like a month and see if anything shifts for me. Because for me, what I learned when I looked at my human design is that I actually needed to do things the opposite way of how I learned to do things. It was in business, we're taught to make mental decisions. What's logical, efficient, practical choices. And as a woman, when I was coming up in business, the way you made decisions was like, you just go do it. Like, if you want to do it, you pound the pavement, you make it happen. In human design, I'm actually designed to do neither of those things. I'm designed to be clear about what I want, let it go, wait until the universe brings something for me to respond to, and then I'm never to make a decision logically or in the now moment. I am to allow my emotions to guide my decisions. So that means I'm supposed to wait before I say yes or no to something. So this was really counter to me. And the idea of using emotions in my work and in business was like, no, this is weird. So I practiced. And at the end of a month, I was like, okay, I'll give it another month. Like, I clearly, something's different. I feel slightly different. And everything started to line itself up in a different way at that time. So
what is your human design? What is that when you wait and feel? Is that a projector?
It's a generator. It's a generator.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So there's 4 types in human design. Generators make up about 70% of the population, and they break into 2 categories: full generators and manifesting generators.
Okay.
So about half and half. And then, so that's generators and manifesting generators. Projectors, which is what you are about 20% of the population. And you all are designed as a projector to follow your path, whatever brings you joy, and wait to be invited to the things that you want to get into. And that feels a little weird because you're like, how does that actually happen? It actually happens really easy for projectors who are following their path. And the thing about projectors is they always are kind of walk off the beaten path. They're always doing something a little different than others, which feels weird, right? But the irony is that when you're allowing yourself to do it with grace and ease and not worry about anybody else, everyone else admires you and they invite you. They're like, want you in their camp because you're the one that seems to make these new, interesting things look so easy. I want to be more like you, is why they receive invitations.
So, what's so interesting, because we also did the why, and it so suits my why, because my why is challenge, which is someone who is outside the box, off the beaten path. So it's the confirmation of 2 different things that come together like that. And I found it so fascinating because I've had a lifetime of asking the universe for things to appear, and then they would come to me. And people would be like, what? I have these miracle manifestation stories of things coming to me and being asked. And, but there's also this part of me that wants to let go of control. That's very hard to let go of control and just allow things to happen. And I think that's something with most people. would want to say,
Mhm.
I want to be in control of all of this. But for a projector, that's particularly important. So
Mhm.
that was a big lesson for me to kind of let go even more, even though I teach people to let
Right,
go.
we teach people what we're learning.
Easier said than done, right? So,
Exactly.
so how, once you learned that about yourself and saw the impact, because I know that, I mean, I've seen when you described mine to me, there's a lot. It can be a bit overwhelming to really embrace and learn all of the aspects to them. So how long does it
Mhm.
take to learn human design, and how much time do you spend with someone really helping them understand it and implementing it fully, in their lives?
It's just for people who are familiar, like human design is a system like Myers-Briggs. It's a
Right.
personality type system. We can think about it that way, like Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram. Like there's so many different little factors and facets
Right.
that you can look at. But what I like about human design is that it comes down to very basic principles. You can get into all the granularity if you want to, but at its core, you follow your strategies, what they call it, how you're designed to create, and you follow your authority, which is how you're designed to make decisions. If you can just key into those two things on the daily, that's all you really need to know in human design. So I find that as soon as I introduce somebody to it, they become interested, especially when they can start to see the pattern in their family or coworkers. There's an interest to know enough to help them understand the byplay between the two types, like between yourself and someone else. Because when you understand some of these things, you can have a lot more compassion. So I like to know it about the people that I work with, because then I can make sure that we work in their style. So if you're designed to make decisions in the now moment and I'm designed to make decisions over time, then I know what, when you're leaning towards the now moment question, then I'm going to go with that, not what I might think or what I've had experience with. So in terms of time, it's really short, but in terms of application, it can take a long time. I find um, people will take this in at a mental level. And if they will work with me for a period of time, then I will teach them how to integrate it into their practices and habits.
Mm.
Because we get so accustomed to doing things a certain way that you don't realize, ooh, I just fell into the old pattern instead of like listening to my authority, which is the way you make decisions.
Right, right.
So, mhm.
Yeah, I admire you so much for working with the intuitives, because one of the things that I find, especially when someone is a healer in the healing capacity,
Mhm.
they love what they do. It's like an
Mhm.
artist or a musician. They want to just come in and do their work. With marketing, it gets so complicated trying to explain to other people, why should they come to see you? What is it about you that's unique and different? And so the human design, I think, helps give language to that,
Mhm.
and helps people better understand how they work, right?
It
So
does.
I think this is a really tremendous tool, because most people don't see themselves. Everything is a mirror for them. So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think that this acts as a mirror for people to really get a better sense of who they are and how they operate in the world.
I think so too. And what I really loved is what you're saying about human design in terms of being a mirror. I really loved when we did the why session together,
Mm-hmm.
because when you put the two pieces together, it seems like a really lovely powerhouse for an individual. So if you know how you're designed to create, and you know how you're designed to make decisions, and you know what sort of the focus of your why is in the world, like the why, the what, and the how,
Yeah.
it seems like everything gets very simplified and easy to follow. That would affect how you market, that would affect how you make your programs, that would affect how you like to engage with your clients. I mean, there's just so many different PowerPoints in that just like make it amazing. So,
Yeah, so let's for the audience who doesn't know what the why is, um
mhm.
if people are familiar with the TED Talk, Simon Sinek did a number of years ago, got millions of views, where he talked about the importance of knowing your why. And
Mhm.
Gary Sanchez saw him speak and said, wow, I want to know my why. And Simon said, I help people discover why it's important. I don't help them figure out their why. So Gary came up with this assessment that you take, and it tells you your why, your how, and your what. So there's actually 9 different types of whys. So your why and my why are actually very similar, which was cool because your better way challenge makes sense. Is that correct? Your why operating
I think
system.
so.
So better way people are visionaries. They're always trying to improve upon things and make things better. And so these are the people who are the entrepreneurs. They see things before other people see them. So sometimes they can get very frustrated because they see something and they have to wait for everyone else to catch up. That's that visionary. So that better way is always improving. So someone like Judith is not going to be stagnant in her life. She's always moving, always trying to improve upon what she has and helping her clients improve. That doesn't end. And then how she does that. And here's the thing, people will say, oh, you know, I already know my why is my family. What it is you had your why before you had your family, just like your human design was before that. When you had your profession, it's intrinsic into you and who you are as a human being. So the why is why you do what gets you up in the morning. So how you do this is you challenge conventional thinking and think outside the box. So that's also visionary. So the combination of the two is perfect for people who are outside the box, visionaries, intuitives. That would totally make sense because, you know, yes, you do conventional work, but this is not where your passion is, right? And then what you ultimately bring is the ability to make sense out of complicated situations and problems. So you and I are both visionary problem solvers. Mine are reverse where my why is challenge and my how is better way. So my why is that I'm outside the box. And then I want to make it better. How I do that is making it better. And then what I ultimately bring is the ability to make sense. So both of us, as having to make sense, we see the answers to problems before other people see them. And so the challenge for us and in your work would be, how do I get someone there, their own unique way, through their own human design? Because it's not up to us to tell people what it should look like. So it's the breadcrumbs of guiding people there.
Exactly. It was uncanny when we did my why. I was like, yep, that helps me crystallize it, because I'll describe it in various different ways, but that pretty much sums it up. I take people who are trying to find a better way because they're not happy in their life in whatever world, and it's usually around work, in relationship to relationships. And then we approach it from this really different, innovative way, because we don't do business the way traditional people do business. And I can often see the path for them that's unique to them.
Yep, so can you give me an example of someone who you worked with who was really stuck and helped them? Because here's the other unique thing is when you're working with people who are intuitives and people who are, you know, a little unique, many are often afraid to put themselves out there, right? They're like, what will people think? That's a big one. So how do you help people overcome that and step into their power and really own that part of them?
You know, one of the things I'm kind of coming to understand right now is that you don't have to openly share your intuitive. What I'm finding is that it makes it a whole lot easier to speak to you and give you more understanding about why things are happening the way they are if you're intuitive. If you're not intuitive and you're not like versed in the self-awareness, usually something in the world has given you some awareness, or what I'm teaching is so common sense. It's like, well, of course that makes sense. Right. So when I work with people who are intuitive, it makes it a lot easier to help them grow or help them understand what's going on. So for instance, I was working with somebody recently who was running into a group challenge. They were having a crisis of leadership in a group and it had grown too large. And I'm kind of simplifying all of this just because we're sharing publicly, but the group had doubled in size and there was a lot of strife internally. And her position was to advise the group. And she's not normally intuitive. She does not work in that camp, but she happened to be engaged with me. So I said, okay, if you're willing to give me some latitude, I can tell you that makes sense right now that this is going on for that group because of the way that I understand astrology. So I can tell what types of transformations we're working on as a collective. And so I can say, okay, that's not that big of a problem, which when you're in the middle of a problem, it feels like a big problem, but I can see like, okay, I can see where this is going in the big picture. And then because I'm an intuitive and I'm sensitive to things in a different way, I don't see the world as problems. So what they're going through is not a problem. It's an indication that that particular group wants to grow, right? So that's a completely different way to tackle a business challenge. They want to grow. That's not a problem. And if you can see them as asking for the structures and systems and acknowledgement for how great they are, that they've grown so much that they need more support to get bigger. Then if you see that instead of as petty infighting, when you see it as I'm asking for the support and infrastructure to be a more powerful group, you just reframed the whole situation, right? Right. So I'm able to see that because I've spent a lot of years looking at situations differently than you would normally tackle something like that. Right? When you're intuitive, you go to that first. When you're not intuitive, it takes you some support from the outside to help you see it. Because as soon as I gave her that perspective, she's like, oh, I see. I can completely address this now with much more grace rather than feeling like all the strife and how are we ever going to come to peace? Like, do you see? I find that intuitives will naturally go to the higher framed view of something rather than something out of scarcity or fear or competition or divisiveness, right? Who's going to win?
Right. And you know what? I love that. And we haven't delved into the astrology part of it. It's interesting for me because, when I sit across from an astrologer and they start talking about this is your sun sign, this is your moon sign, this is a house, and this is another sign, and this is in retrograde, and this is an alignment, and I'm like,
again, another one. Human design can do the same, right? They're both in that same camp.
They're both in that same camp. Or like when you were describing things, it can often come off overwhelming. And if you understand the language of astrology, when someone says, oh, what's your moon sign? What's your sun sign? And I'm like, I don't understand what that means. So for you to be able to break it down and use it, because I've been trying to listen to more astrology because there's a lot going on right now where they talk about Pluto and its impact. So when we have a better understanding of what's going on as above, so below, if there's strife going on, or my understanding is right now we are going through an astrological period where people are being called to step into your truth. You are literally being called, kicking and screaming, to clean out your cobwebs of your closet and step into who you are. And there are people who will do it voluntarily, and there are those who do, no, no, no. Like, and here's the thing that people need to understand is that if you do it voluntarily, it's a much easier ride because God doesn't care if it's done, on your terms or God's terms, because oftentimes it can happen with a 2x4 that can be quite painful. And I had a partner in a business years ago. I had a wellness center and I had just had this breakdown. And I was going through, because for those people who understand this is the dark night of the soul, where I was having all of this stuff coming up and I had to look at it. And it was a very painful time in my life. And she said to me, I have no interest in working on myself. I said, why? She goes, because you cry too much. And I said, well, none of us get out unscathed. And then it wasn't much longer than that. She was in a motorcycle accident and broke a lot of bones in her body and had to sit in the hospital. And I don't want to scare people and tell people, if you don't look at yourself, you're going to get in a car accident. But I welcome people to say, to own it. Like if you're
Mhm.
going to do the work and look inside, it's always the fear of looking than it is when you actually look at it and release it and clear it. It's much
Mhm.
easier once you look at it and clear it. But I love, I'm curious as to how you use astrology in your work and helping people, because these are all amazing tools that the
Mhm.
average person doesn't even understand or know that they can be used to guide you. Like, they talk about retrograde. And, every time people's technology goes bad, oh, Mercury must be in retrograde. Don't sign a contract.
Yeah, it's true. That's what people say. Um, well, I like to use astrology because it helps me with the weather of energy. If you think about energy, there's weather, and it can get a little overwhelming if you are living your life and you're hearing us talk about all these things and think, oh, I got to go learn astrology, or I need to learn human design, right? It's like you don't really need to, but if you find somebody who is already an expert at it and they can speak about it in a way that helps you, then follow them, right? So for astrology, I'm more of a self-taught person where I want to learn little pieces as it's relevant. And what I like to do with astrology is use it for the weather of the time. So when I say, it makes total sense that this organization's having this problem because Pluto, as you mentioned, is moving into a sign that is all about collaborative, engaged communities, and in anything that's in the way of that community thriving, or in any way we've been not in integrity with ourselves, it's going to come to the surface and we're going to just have to grow through it, right? So like you're saying, and when you talk about dark nights of the soul, I don't think they ever end. It's just we have the big waking up moment, and then it's like, hello, if I want to live a happy life,
Back again.
right,
Back again.
let's take a look at the things that I want. How am I, because we learn so many things that keep us away from just that very childlike, innocent, lovely, creative, I can trip through life and enjoy everything along the way. We forget that. So every time we need to remind ourselves something painful comes along, we're like, oh, I forgot that I can create happily and easily. Um, and so the astrology for me is find somebody that is a good teacher or a good person to share about what's going on, and then listen to it to guide you so that you can feel positive about what's happening. Because really all astrology is a reflection of, here's the tone of the energy moving around right now. How do you want to use it, or how do you want to ride that wave of energy to your benefits? That's how I use it. Like, how does this help me see the big picture? What's happening at a sort of systemic, community-wide level? And then you can get really granular about how is it affecting you when you find a good teacher that will walk you through it. Or you can teach yourself.
I love that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I really love that. So I'm curious because you have a lot of tools. So
Mm-hmm.
we talked about the human design and astrology. Any other tools that you use that you
Oh my
want to make
gosh, I
people aware?
pull on so many. How many of us, by the time you get, like, have you not worked with crystals? Have you not worked with oracle cards? Have you worked with, um, what else? Numerology is another one that I'll kind of turn to occasionally.
So how do
I
you
have,
use numerology? I'm curious with that. How does it benefit people? Like I use a West African form of numerology based on the year that you're born, but I know it's different than traditional numerology.
I'm in human design, and we're similar in this because in human design, I have a profile that likes to learn. So whenever something catches my interest, I dig into it. So numerology was one of those that I dug into for a while. I listen to it similarly to astrology from listening to the energetic tone. So you can use numerology based on the month and the year. So what the overall year tone of energy, or a month's tone of energy, when you combine them all, you can actually look at the numerology of an individual person Occasionally I will do that just because it speaks to someone's path in life. There's one of your numbers in numerology will show your path, like what you're here to learn in this lifetime. Um, Occasionally I'll use that. Sometimes it just pops in, like, yeah, you're working along and I'm like, I just need to understand this. The numbers show up in a way.
Right.
So
So what are the
I'll pay
different
attention to
numbers,
that.
like you go through, are they 1 through 0 or is it 1 through 10? Like what are the numbers, or 1 through 9? Is that how it is?
It's usually 1 through 9 and all the other numbers reduce. But let's
Mhm.
say I'm dealing with somebody who's like a 22 or 11 or 33. You know, when you have the two numbers together, it just amplifies their energy. They're working with a higher vibration energy. So a 33 would actually be a 6 person. And
Right.
so if they have a 33 as a major number in their life, then they can operate with 6 energy and have it be simpler. But if they have a 33, I have a 44 that's pretty active in my numerology, which means, hello, you've got to deal with this at a higher frequency. You have to learn the higher level expression of that energy.
So if I
That makes
wanted
sense.
to figure out what my number, because is it a life number? Is that what it's called?
There's like a life path,
A
life
life path.
destiny, a
Yeah.
couple of others. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you would add up your birth year with your birth date and all of
Do you
that.
know who has? Yes, you do. You do your your full birth date, and you do your name, your full legal name, and then
Yeah.
there's the alternative of what the name you use, and so they compare it. Do you know who has a really excellent book on this? Is Dan Millman.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. The
he
Peaceful
has
Warrior.
exactly. He
Yeah.
wrote a book, and it's a beautiful Bible because it's a compendium of it explains numerology, it takes you through the steps, and then it has like the little encyclopedia of where you can look up each number combination, and then he explains it in terms of your life path and your life destiny and all the components. It's a great book.
Wow.
um, I think it's like living your life purpose or something along those lines. um, but it does make it a simplified way. There's a beautiful numerologist. Do you have a particular numerologist you follow? There, I have several,
Oh,
but there's one that has a great article on the numerology of your house address, that your house can hold a frequency of energy based on its address. And danged if it has not actually been true over time. Like I'm a little skeptic about all of these things until I try it out. But I've lived in a 7 house, a 6 house, a 4 house, a 1 house, and based on the addresses. And every one of those houses matched the frequency of that particular energy.
that is so interesting. And
Very
not so
interesting.
much from a standpoint of numerology, but I find I use numbers as signs, right? There's certain
Mm-hmm,
numbers that
mm-hmm,
I ask to show up in my life, and then I will often then know, okay, that's a confirmation. And I know for
mm-hmm.
people who don't believe in synchronicity, they may think, how are you going to make a life decision based on a number showing up? But I will tell you, with enough experience in my life, so this was interesting. 44 and 144 show up for me a lot. And
Okay.
when my ex-husband and I were looking to move, um, everyone kept telling, we found this house that we loved, and everyone kept saying, that's too far out of town. You don't want to have your new daughter who's in high school, because people won't come out to see you. It was 10 minutes out of town. But everyone was like, no, you need to be in town, walkable. And the address was 144, and I was like, nope, I'm gonna do it. And guess who was the house that everyone came to? Our house. We
Mm-hmm.
were the house that all the kids came to. Somehow they figured out a way to get to our house. And then someone had asked me to get involved in a nonprofit. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure. And then the address was 44 Pleasant Street. And I'm like, okay, it's, and you know what? It didn't mean that I couldn't have said no. I mean, I could still have gotten involved and then said no. But I don't know what it is, but those kinds of signs that I look for, numbers are a big one, and even to a point of license plates, like a car pulling in front of me where a number will show up, or patterns
Mm-hmm,
that appear, quarters, dimes. I'm a big proponent of signs. I don't know if you've ever worked with that
mm-hmm.
yourself.
Yep. Signs and symbols. Yeah. For me, it's a lot of animals, like often birds. For me, it's
Okay.
often birds. But yes, different types of signs and symbols is a whole nother part of listening, not with our thoughts, but listening to what's showing up. Because, I mean, there are many ways you can look at your life, but I like to look at it from the place that the universe was laid out for me to create anything and everything I wanted and would support me in doing it. And that's just me needing to figure out how to line myself up. And since the universe is supporting me, then I can get creative about the ways that it's giving me symbols and signs and guidance,
Right.
because it doesn't talk to me like some people can hear, but that does not how it works for me. So I find my path.
Yeah,
I agree.
the universe is always guiding us.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
world is always working to get us working to get us to move in a certain way. And so I
Exactly.
just look at the signs as a way of breadcrumbs to get me to where I need to go, because and this is something that I've worked at as a projector. It may not work for a manifesting generator or some of the other
Mm-hmm.
human designs, but for me, even to a point where we did a meditation in a group, and they said, set an intention and then ask for a sign. And we went outside and walked a labyrinth, and my sign was a white bird. And literally in the middle of the labyrinth was a white statue of a bird. And I'm like, does that count? They're like, of course it did. But and then my sign showed up much faster than everyone else's sign. And I was like, oh, that's the projector that was showing up for me. So I
Mm-hmm.
love the combination of all of these things to help guide people, because ultimately the way you work with people is it's got to come from them, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to make decisions, especially when you're lost or not quite sure where to go. When you use all of these tools, it's kind of like letting the universe guide you, and you can kind of, I just had a flash of like floating along a lazy river instead
Mm-hmm.
of fighting against the current. Does that make sense?
Exactly. And that's for me, it's the simpler you can make it, the better off you are.
Yeah.
And so if you can follow your authority in human design, then do that. Or follow the thing for you that's as close to that in your life, because it doesn't need to be hard. That's my biggest message. It should be joyful and it doesn't need to be hard. Like, find your way. And it's
Find
going
your
to be for
way.
everybody, it's their different ways, right? And then how do we integrate them so that we can all be harmonious together, you know?
Right. And I love the fact, I mean, for someone who's just starting out, these are great tools to start out with to really lay down the foundation to get you
Mm-hmm.
moving so that you're not questioning things. And then for
Right.
someone who wants to rebrand or go in a different direction, these are also tools to say, am I
Mm-hmm.
going in the right direction? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I doing it the way I'm supposed to be doing it? Because just
Mm-hmm.
even working with you to tweak and fine tune what you've already got, can make a difference between, boulders in front of you or a few pebbles or just a smooth sailing. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
I think that what you offer, even though it's different, which I love because I'm a challenge and a better way, just like
Mm-hmm.
you are, I'm always looking for things that, um, confirmations. Am I
Mm-hmm.
am I on the right path? Because it's scary. When you start to invest money and time and going in the wrong direction, there's nothing more disheartening. And there's never a wrong directions per se, because there's always a lesson in it, but it could be smoother.
Mm-hmm. It can always be smoother. There isn't, like I tell my clients when I work with them, you're never made a wrong decision, ever, ever, ever.
Right,
Your soul won't ever let you make a wrong decision. You just made a choice that was more painful than other choices.
right,
You're still going to get to where you're going, always. There's no way your soul's not going to help you get where you want to go. It's
right.
just, are you listening for the choices that are going to be smoother for you? Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I,
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Anything that we've missed that's important that you want to talk about, anything that you do or anything
Yeah,
coming
I
up?
do. I really want to make sure that people hear this message because I think it's at the beginning stages. So I'm doing this little forecasting thing a little bit. But I really think that anyone who is in the business realm of whatever dimension it is, whether you're in the closet, out of the closet, or straight conventional, we're going to go through, I think, a period over the next 20 years where we're going to see an increasing demand for finding, we'll use the word fulfillment and meaning, and I will use the word alignment in business. And so to the degree where we're going to see businesses, larger businesses struggling, who cannot create an environment that is fulfilling and meaningful for people. And so if anybody is in the work of helping others find their way, I think you're going to see a lot of growth. So get ready and be prepared to help people. So because I work with so many intuitives, and often we're small businesses, and often we have felt like it's not ever really been our time. It's our time, right? There is a demand and need for us to help people find ways to make their lives meaningful, but then it's also going to be helping them know that they can create an environment in a workplace. You don't have to be a solo person. You don't have to work on your own, right? There's just going to be such a need in that realm. So,
and that's also a great leader. I just interviewed someone this morning who talked about, when you make it about the people, what are your goals? What is it that you want? How can we as a business help you achieve your goals and utilizing your strengths? You've got a keeper now. You've got someone who's loyal, who's gonna go the extra mile for you because you have asked them what they want. What a concept. I can't even begin to tell you how much abuse goes on in business and how many people are treated so poorly, and the goals are not set around, no one asks you, what is it you want? How can we, create a track for you that and make people excited to come to work? And so when you make something meaningful, and I was telling you, as the millennials get older, I mean, I hate to use categories, but they are about meaning. They won't do it. And you've got these baby boomer clash, and you can call all these categories whatever you want, but you can choose to fight the tide or bring in people and treat them the way they deserve to be treated. Because why would you want to spend more than half your day doing something that makes you miserable? Then you're sick, you don't want to be there, and you can't wait to leave.
Well, why would we do it? You asked the question, why would we do it? Well, because we've trained ourselves into that over years and decades of the way we built our societies. And because of the way we're shifting, that's just not going to continue to be acceptable. Energetically, it's not supported. So I don't think, that's why I'm saying is that for those of us who are in this world, we're going to see a huge transformation over the next couple of decades.
Well, and I think it's interesting because one of the gifts that COVID gave us was it stopped the world, right? And people were on that hamster wheel, and suddenly they're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm now spending time with my family. I'm actually getting out in nature and doing things. And people were like, I don't want to do this anymore. And there was this great resignation, and people aren't coming back, and they're starting their own businesses, and they're doing what they love. And so that is going to continue, as it sounds like, for the next 20 years and on. So if you're looking to really discover more of what you're passionate about and going in the right in the direction that your soul is looking to achieve, I'm going to have Judith, information and links for you to reach out to her, because even just doing the human design with her, along with all of her other gifts, is really going to give you a head start in helping you, because there's nothing worse than trying to start a business and then figuring out who your clients are, what your marketing is, and trying to figure it out on your own. You're going to save a lot of time and money by just going right to the expert.
Thank you. I would love, whether it's a solo business or a team or a larger organization, it all shows up in different categories, but I would love to support whoever is trying to get their meaning in their life lined up with their work.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Judith. And I'm going to have her information in the description, so you'll be able to find her. And please reach out to her. And if you have any questions and want to know more, yeah, just reach out to either one of us. And thank you so much. And
Thank you,
look
Lisa.
forward to
Thank you.
talking to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is wonderful. Thank you.